This week, sad, selfish Sarah Boone is finally heading to trial. But based on the interrogation I'm about to play for you, I'm pretty sure that Sarah's ex-husband, Brian, has been going through his own nightmarish trial for the past 20 years as he's been married and had a child with awful Sarah Boone.
I am currently located in my unmarked agency vehicle in front of 4748 France Lane, apartment number 3 in Winter Park, Florida. Also in the car with me is my partner,
Scott Lowen, Detective of the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
And your name, sir?
Brian, 175.
Okay.
Sarah just spent the past 24 hours zipping her boyfriend of 3 years up in a suitcase, allegedly pushing him down a staircase, and then refusing to let him out while she fell asleep in their bedroom overnight. Sarah didn't get out of bed until noon the next morning, which is typical for her, when lo and behold, she found her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, dead from suffocation in the suitcase where she left him. Immediately, she called her ex-husband, Brian. Come to find out, she's been doing this a lot in her life. And Brian had to tell her to call 911 to try to get help for Jorge. He rushed over because he didn't know what was happening, and it was Sarah's day to have their child. Sarah was not happy because there was some kind of Dr. Pepper emergency. For more information, check out my last video on Sarah. But Brian, who had just come to help out, had to give a short statement to police and then rush off to pick up Sarah's son that she shares with Brian, Lucas, from school. The interrogation I'm about to show you happens later. After they've gotten Sarah settled and they've removed Jorge's body, they go back to chat with Brian about what kind of sick, selfish person Sarah really is.
So, Brian, to my understanding, you were called over here. So can you just take me back to this morning and your involvement with Sarah, which is your ex-wife?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. We've been divorced about a year and a half.
Okay.
So Sarah's been divorced from Brian for 1.5 years. You may remember in my last video, it became clear that Sarah's been with Jorge for about 3 years. So you do the math.
I started calling her probably 10:30 or so. It's her day to pick up the kid, but
Okay.
it doesn't always happen. It's 1 or 2 days a week, maybe she gets him.
Sarah's supposed to have almost 50-50 custody of Lucas, but she rarely takes him. As we'll go on to find, she gets him maybe once or twice a week, and she makes it totally dependent on whether or not Jorge is quote-unquote in a good mood or if she feels like having a kid around.
So
Out of the 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And what do you pick, like every other day you're supposed to?
Well, we're supposed to. She's Monday, Tuesday, I'm Wednesday, Thursday, and then we alternate Friday through Sunday is how it's supposed to. I was actually, my lawyer back a couple weeks ago because I was looking to get it changed because she can never stick to it. There's always...
I feel really bad for Brian. I mean, maybe there's a bunch of SHIT I don't know about him, right? But in this whole situation with Sarah, he comes off as a pretty kind and caring father, a pretty stable provider and husband in the past, someone who's doing his best to make it through an almost impossible situation with a mother who clearly doesn't want to mother her child, but also doesn't want to take care of herself. As we'll see, throughout the interview, it becomes apparent that Brian is still providing financially for Sarah. Why he does this, I mean, maybe it's all court ordered, but the feeling I get is that he just feels like he's between a rock and a hard place because Sarah is the mother of his only child.
some reason why. So it's general that I start calling her around to find out if she's actually going to get him, even though yesterday she told me she would. So I started calling her about 10:30. Never got any answer until I can tell you. So I finally got a hold of her at 12:49.
And did she call you or you call her?
No, I called her. I'd called her at 11:25. I did that twice. I always call twice because generally she's asleep or whatever. And
to speed this up, Brian called a bunch of times. But of course, Sarah didn't answer because she was probably asleep.
Freaking out, saying that George was dead and could I please come over?
Dear Brian, this is where you needed to be like, hell to the nah, Sarah. You need to deal with this on your own.
So, I told her, you need to call the police. Mm-hmm. And went and got my dog in his crate and everything, and started heading over here. She called me again at 12:54 asking if I was going to be coming over, if I'd left yet.
So, she left her boyfriend, who she cheated on you with for, I guess, 1.5 years before you got divorced, in a suitcase, let him die, and then she called you repeatedly as you were putting your dog away to be like, are you coming yet? When are you coming? Wow, Brian. Wow.
I told her I had already left. I was going to be there in a couple minutes. So I got here, knocked on the door, walked in just right in the front entrance area. Told her once again, you need to call the police.
Was she on the phone with anyone when
Not
you
yet.
saw her?
Not yet.
Okay.
She was shaking.
Okay, so poor Mr. Brian strolls up like the stable rock he's probably always been for this woman. And this is what happens.
She was trying to get herself something to drink because she was just like freaking out. So that's when she got on the phone and called, and I said, I'm going outside because I don't really want to be in here right now. So I came outside and I sat in my car until people showed up, and
Okay.
it's kind of where we've gone from there. So
It's been a long time since she found Jorge, but Brian has to remind her again to call 911, and she's so busy needing to get a drink for herself that he finally is like, look, I gotta go sit out in the car. I can't be a part of this anymore.
Okay. So you called her about 5 or 6 times before she answered.
yeah, which completely normal.
Normal to you. Okay. The rotation real quick. So Monday, Tuesday, she'll have them. Wednesday, Thursday, you'll have them. And then you rotate each weekend.
Yeah, well,
Like it's every other weekend?
how it's supposed to work. Generally, it's 1 or 2 times, maybe a week. I think she had him last Tuesday was the last time he was actually over here.
And spent the night?
Yes.
Okay.
It's probably another week before that.
What's your son's name?
Lucas. Lukas.
So sad. Okay, now we're going to hear a little bit about what Lucas has been going through with this freaking monster.
Okay. And Boone?
Yeah.
You think he stayed here last Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was last Tuesday.
Okay, so you technically have him more than she does. Is that where you're getting?
Yeah, that's why I said I was going
so
to the
even
lawyer.
though
I was
that's
trying
how
to get
it's
things
supposed to be, you still have him.
Yeah,
the majority.
it's a not a good day. George is in a bad mood or whatever else reason. I think sometimes just she wants to stay up and drink and can't really do that if she's got to wake up and take him to school the next day.
Right.
Any number of different reasons. So. But.
Okay.
Okay, so here's where I know a lot of you might be like second guessing, like, hey, Brian, what's wrong with you? Why are you allowing your small son to go and stay with this woman, this crazy, sick, selfish Sarah Boone? And I've thought that as well. I do think there's some level of a lot of this being influenced by what's legally, number one, what's legally required of Brian to do at this point in time. And number two, the fact that his son, loves his mom. That's my understanding of the situation, is that Brian has done a good enough job of protecting his son from his mother's awful decisions, where Lucas still wants to be with her, and it's very difficult to separate your child from one of the parents, and that's not always the best thing to do either, right? So I do think, from what I've read and the research I've done, that Brian did really seem to be in a very difficult spot with this.
How long have you known Sarah?
Since, let's see here, I was probably 23 or so when we met.
Oh, wow.
Something like that.
Since you were 23?
Yeah, so probably, 20 years. We dated for quite a while, and then got married, whatever it was, 12, 13 years ago, something like that. Well, I guess 12, 13 years ago before the divorce, so I guess like 14, 15 ago, something like that, maybe.
Okay, so I will say that here's where it becomes apparent to me that Brian had a lot of time and opportunities to run the heck away from this woman. They've been together for a very long time. So who knows, what his motivations are in all of this, but it doesn't seem or sound like Sarah ever really contributed much to their relationship or their family, as we'll find out going further into the interrogation.
What can you tell me about her?
I don't, she's generally not, she can get a bit violent when she drinks. Not to this kind of extent. I don't know what happened exactly. But,
right. No, I'm just looking for,
that was part of it. The alcohol has gotten worse and worse and worse over the years. That's one of the main reasons why I divorced her. I just couldn't deal with it. It got to the point where, on weekdays, she'd go out, and I guess the George person is one of the people she had met, because I separated at one point and went over to my parents' house to live for a few months, and I guess she met him over at the pool place or something like that. But I'd come back when we were in therapy trying to work it out, and on a weeknight when he's got school the next day, I've got work the next day, she was out till 3 o'clock in the morning when the bar closes, and she'd bring people back over on the back porch. One time some random person walked in my house and started screaming for Sarah at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning when we're trying to sleep. I just couldn't get over it.
Brian, dude, you shouldn't get over it. It sounds like she put you and your child at risk constantly. I just can't believe people like this get away with treating people who love them in such a shit way.
So did you still live here?
No. I bought her out of our house.
Okay.
I
Listen to this. It's like Brian really tried to do everything right. In order to do the best he could for his son, he went ahead and paid Sarah a bunch of money to buy her out of the house, even though he was the only one working when they were together. And he did it so that his son could stay in the house he was familiar with.
I was going to just sell it and move because I kind of want to go back to College Park, which is where I'm from, but I thought it would be maybe easier for Lucas if I just bought her out and kept that house so he had a little bit of continuancy, kind of.
Understandable.
So that's what I ended up doing, and then she moved right down the street here, so.
And how long would you say the alcoholism has been a part of her life?
It's always been a part of her life. It seemed to have gotten worse and worse, I think more or less kind of since we had Lucas.
Okay, so trigger warning, because this is going to be really sad. And I just want to put out there that, like, many people have postpartum issues, postpartum depression, psychosis, all those kinds of things. It's like a real issue that I can certainly sympathize with. I deal with depression in my own life, and I know I had all these up and down mood swings after having my children. It's a big deal, and it's something that, number one, should be taken seriously, and number two, people should be, like, sympathetic and empathetic towards. People's hormones just go crazy, right? And it can really affect them a lot during and after pregnancy. I hope that we live in a time and place where that's very much acknowledged. But what Brian talks about in regards to Sarah Boone sounds very different to me. I'm not saying that there isn't a chance that there was some postpartum depression going on, but it's like her whole way of dealing with that disappointment, depression, whatever else she had happening was to be like, not only am I not happy, I'm depressed, I'm not connected with my child, I also don't want to do anything. I don't want to go back to work and therefore be able to pay for someone to watch my child so that he can be safe. Part of my depression is like, I don't want to have a job. I don't want to have any responsibilities. I want to live my life completely free and clear, but have someone take care of me at the same time. And, I think that's quite different from what most of us have experienced when we've had some kind of issue after pregnancy and birth.
And I think a lot of it was the fact that she kind of, I guess, maybe felt trapped or something.
Okay.
That, before that, whenever she wanted, you're outside having a drink. Oh, I want to go play pool. You go over across the street, you play pool for a little bit. Yeah. That's not happening anymore when she got a kid.
Right.
So.
How old's your son?
He is 9. So, but she started just getting really angry when she drank a lot. She said last night she fell asleep. There were plenty of times where she just basically passed out from drinking. So,
you've witnessed her pass out from drinking?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And when she passes out, is she out cold?
Oh, she's out.
How difficult would it be to wake?
So Brian just goes on to say, it would be pretty difficult to wake her, and I've seen that happen, many times, and the police are just asking about this because it relates to, maybe what happened to Jorge Torres. I guess they're it's sort of lending some credence to the idea that she may not have heard him or been very aware of what was going on with him as he suffocated to death.
What do you know about her and George's relationship, if anything?
It only gets worse, friends, because now we're going to find out that Brian wasn't only having to deal with Sarah Boone's crazy shit. It turns out that Jorge was also, and people go back and forth between calling him Jorge and George, but either way, it's this guy was also getting into constant altercations with Sarah. He was arrested, Sarah was arrested, people in the apartment complex would call the police all the time on them. They actually almost got kicked out of the apartment complex several times, and there's an interrogation of the apartment manager, which I will share with you later, that is very informative about Sarah Boone's crazy drunken antics running around naked in the apartment building. So, what's sad about it is Brian's getting called about all this crap. He's helping pay for the apartment. He's enabling Sarah in all kinds of crazy ways. And we'll learn a little bit about that now.
I think she had him arrested 5 or 6 times for domestic violence. He's stuck a steak knife in the back of her leg one time.
Okay. So has he always been the one that gets arrested, or has she ever?
She was also one of the times.
Okay.
One of the times, both of them were arrested. But all the others have been him. But the very next day, she's in there trying to get him bailed out. So
Right.
I don't know. Basically, they get drunk, they get in a fight, she gets upset, she calls the cops. Granted, I saw lots of black eyes, bruises.
On her?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, there definitely was. Now,
would you see George as much as you would see him or her?
I hardly ever saw him.
You hardly ever.
Brian does spend some time here talking about how Sarah made him really frustrated after the divorce. He tries not to really be around Sarah and Jorge very much. He only deals with them in relationship to his child Lucas for the most part, and also because he financially basically still takes care of Sarah.
When you guys do drop-offs or anything, is it always through the school, or would you like have to come here and see them, or no?
No, it's pretty much always during the school. Now sometimes she would come over or something like that. Sometimes he would be driving, but I mean, he would just stay in the car. She would come in, so I mean, I really wouldn't see him.
So it's not like you have like conversations with George. Okay.
No, I mean, maybe a few times when they've drunkenly called me at night because she was telling me she needed to escape because whatever's going on, or she's put him on the phone, but I don't know.
When's like the last incident that you recall of there being like a domestic dispute between her and George?
I mean, she told me like a week ago she had to escape from the house and wanted me to come pick her up. I told her I wasn't going to because I'm just tired of it happening. I mean, it was midnight. I mean, child's trying to sleep, and just honestly, I don't always believe her when she said these things were going on.
Seriously, it's clear that Sarah has cried wolf way too many times for anyone to be believing her at this point. It's sad, but it's true.
She called you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, apparently she went back inside and slept well. Was in a fine mood the next day. I guess didn't really remember calling me, so I don't know if it was just
brought up again?
if it was just she wanted to come over to, I don't know. She keeps on trying to come over to like hang out or something like that, or she'll come over to spend time with Lucas rather than actually just having him over here like she's supposed to. But she wants to come over there and play with him, and so I'm not sure how real that was. Last time I know there was an actual physical confrontation. It's probably been a little while because this last time George got arrested, I know he was on pre-trial, whatever, something. I don't know. He had a parole officer. He had a domestic violence class. He's like...
So that's the last time, basically the last time he was arrested was the last physical altercation that you recall?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know for sure, but I think so.
There is so much crap going on with these two. Brian can't even remember for sure when the last time the police were called out to the place was.
And you said when she drinks that she can get physically aggressive?
She can. I mean, she did it to me a lot where she'd hit me and stuff like that. I mean, she's tiny. What do you mean hit, though? Like open hand smack you, or like try to punch you? Yeah, she'd punch me. I mean, more arms. She many times would use her claws. I mean, I had scratches on my neck at times, on my arms. I mean, things like that where she'd dig with her claws.
Okay.
This was some important information for the investigators, the detectives, the police officers Ryan's speaking with now, because Jorge was found with scratch marks like all over his neck, chest, and I think his back as well.
I never got that drunk, and I had restraint. I never touched her back. I think George didn't have that restraint, and at times he would hurt her back. So I mean, for all I know, all the times he got arrested, she started it. I don't know. I wasn't there, so. But I know she could get violent at times.
Okay.
But I mean,
do you know, like, her drink of choice?
That would be vodka.
And also, allegedly, Dr. Pepper. I mean, check out my last video where, like, she will not stay out of the apartment with Jorge's dead body because she needs to get her freaking Dr. Pepper.
And does she or George have a job?
No. She hasn't worked for over 2 years. Well, I guess you could maybe call what he's got a job. He worked at the Ace Hardware up across the street here.
Okay.
Which is now going out of business.
Okay.
He kind of off and on worked there. When he did work, it was 15, 20 hours a week, something like that. I mean, my alimony and stuff basically pays for where they live. So, I mean, they didn't need a ton, but I mean, she was always calling to borrow money, and it's been like 2 years since she got a job. She keeps on telling me she's looking. She's always finding a good opportunity.
Brian, you got to be honest with yourself, man. She was never looking for a job. Okay, so now I'm just going to share the last part where, Brian basically talks about how he showed up the morning that Jorge was found deceased, to try to wait with Sarah for the police to come. And he just basically talks about what Sarah's priorities were when he arrived.
That's all she told me, so I don't know anything beyond that.
Okay.
And I really didn't talk to her much because I came inside, I told her you need to call the police, and then I came back out, and I think she went on the back porch to smoke a cigarette, so I didn't even really talk with her much.
Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Did you hear that? So Sarah slept until afternoon, called her husband repeatedly when she realized Jorge was deceased. He had gotten there before she called the police. And yet still, her priority was like, look, I gotta have a cigarette, guys. And if you watch my prior video, once the police arrived and she got outside, her priority was she needed her Dr. Pepper. Friends, Sarah Boone is ridiculous. I cannot believe, long before Brian was ever around, I'm sorry, her parents must have been playing some kind of game where they were supporting this kind of sick, sad behavior. Alright guys, join me again for my next video because it's going to be really interesting. I'm going to share the interrogation of Sarah's apartment manager, who has so much crap to say about what Jorge and Sarah were up to in the apartment complex, how everyone hated them because they were constantly drunk and running around doing totally inappropriate things 24 hours a day. Join me here again so we can head down another rabbit hole.